Welcome to the How HR Leaders Change the World podcast. I'm your host, Cecilia Crossley, and each week we explore how the work of HR leaders is also creating positive social change, contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, goals which the world's companies are increasingly understanding the urgency of achieving and investing in the action required. If you'd like clear, actionable ideas for how you can use the power of your role to affect change in your company, you're in the right place. Following a corporate upbringing, I founded the social enterprise From Babies with Love. We provide services to HR leaders, and through this work, I realised that HR professionals and social entrepreneurs are working in the same areas, albeit in different ways. So we created this podcast to share knowledge on steps we can take through the work of HR. In my opinion, if you're an HR professional, you are also a change maker. And this podcast will provide you with examples of how. By sharing the successes of some of the world's most inspiring HR leaders, you can frame your work in the context of positive change, implement brilliant ideas, and feel absolutely wonderful about doing so. An enormous welcome to Emma Codd, Global Inclusion Leader at Deloitte, to How HR Leaders Change the World. I am particularly excited and extremely proud to welcome Emma because Deloitte was From Babies with Love's very first client around 5 years ago. And if it wasn't for Emma's leadership and vision for what we would achieve together, we honestly would not be where we are today. From Babies with Love and all our clients, including Deloitte, we help 26,000 children around the world in 40 countries, which, straight off the bat is how HR leaders change the world. And with that, Emma, just, a big personal thank you from me. And please do introduce yourself.
Thank you. Lovely to be here today. So as you said, my name is Emma Codd. I am Global Inclusion Leader for Deloitte. We are, for those of you that don't know Deloitte, it's quite a recognised, well-known name, but for those of you that don't know us, we are a very large organisation. We operate in over 150 countries around the world. We have over 330,000 people that work for us across all of those locations. And our main work, it falls into four main areas. So audit and advisory and assurance, tax, financial advisory, and consultancy as well. And my role is that I am responsible for everything that we do from a global perspective when it comes to inclusion. And that also includes mental health as well.
So a huge scope of work that you've just very briefly outlined there, and I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about it. So may I dive straight into our questions, which we ask our HR leaders, the first of which is, as an HR leader whose influence creates social change, what do you feel has been your most impactful action to date?
I actually think it is really, I think the event that you talked about earlier, that's something that I am so proud of. Just to give you a little bit of background to that, I've been a partner at Deloitte since 2002. I always forget the precise year. I joined in the late 1990s with the plan that I would stay for 3 years. I am not an HR practitioner by background. I'm not a talent practitioner by background or training. I was actually a financial advisory partner. So I was advising clients on how to deal with integrity and corruption risk when they were going into new ventures overseas. So you probably could say that I've always been a little bit purpose driven, and I've always had the real ethos that I have to absolutely love what I do, and I have to know that what I'm doing is actually changing the world for the better. So, and then I merrily carried on doing my financial advisory work and helping my clients in the best way I could. Had a fantastic team of around 50 people that then expanded globally and got bigger and bigger. And then one day in 2013, our then CEO in the UK, David Sproul, gave me a call and asked me to go and see him. And actually, he put me on our firm's executive committee, so the equivalent of a corporate board, so the group that runs the organisation in the UK. And it was completely out of the blue. He asked me to be managing partner for talent. had no experience, just like people, and I had an engaged and quite happy team, and my attrition rates in my team were very low, and I think he'd done a bit of homework. I had led our women's network as well for 6 years prior to that and was passionate about that as well. So, that may have been what also led him to that decision. And then I almost started with a blank sheet of paper. David's two issues that he wanted to deal with and I wanted to deal with as well. The first one was work-life balance. The second one was gender equality and gender diversity in our organisation, because it was pretty poor. It was actually the one thing we could measure at that time. We can now measure a lot more from a diversity perspective. And when so with both of those, and then there were a far bigger, many more things we also had to focus on, but those were two real priorities. And as part of the data gathering that I was doing and that I did for, to work out what is it that I need to do, I sort of approached it the same way that I approach my client work, which was, where's the problem? How do we fix it? And where do we want to get to? And what do we need to do to get there? And I did that from a gender balance, gender diversity perspective. And one of the things that we realized was that we had so many amazing, incredible women that were leaving us post maternity or parental leave. And it was really stark. It was a real drop at manager and senior manager. And actually, to start with, we weren't recruiting enough women at student level anyway to drop down over a 10-year period from 50-50 down to around 36% women. And so we had a problem at the start. And then we had this real challenge, what was almost like a cliff drop at manager and senior manager. So I was wrestling with a number of things. And when we looked at why they were leaving, it was primarily work-life balance, culture, and career development. And having spoken to some of these women and then other women that had not left and were still within our organisation, it became really clear to me that we needed to address work-life balance. We needed to address culture. Obviously, they told us, or women had told us that as well. We needed to address what I called everyday behaviours. So the way that we led, the throwaway comments, the microaggressions, often unintended, that had quite a significant impact. And we also needed to address engagement while these women were on maternity leave as well. And that was round about the time that somebody sent me an email and said, oh, there's this amazing woman, Cecilia Crossley, who we are working with at one of our, From Babies with Love is one of our social pioneer organizations. And because you've got babies, so at that stage, my girls were, I think, 3 years old. And because you've got children, we thought you'd really like to meet, which was very much stereotyping, but actually resulted. So they were quite right, actually. They said, we think you'd get on really well, and it would just be a great thing if you wanted to meet her. And I remember going to that meeting, and I remember hearing about the incredible work that From Babies with Love was doing. And I remember as the cogs started whirring, as you were talking and showing me these incredibly beautiful gifts, and I was hearing all about the mission and what you were doing, and I was so aligned to that. And then I remember we were saying, could we do this? Could you do this as almost like a corporate gift giving? So could we find a way to send our new parents a baby gift while they are on parental or maternity leave? And obviously the rest is history. And for me, the really important thing was that we had a little handwritten note that went from me, and that there was that personal touch. And it was really just to tell our people, so women and other parents as well, so both male and both men and women, just to say to them that we are still thinking of you. You are really important to us, and also to say to the babies, welcome to the world. And that single thing that we did, and it didn't cost us a huge amount of money, but I still say now that was one of the most engaging things that we ever did. I mean, you couldn't buy the sort of commentary that we got. I remember on Twitter, and you probably saw this at the time, somebody posted a picture of the lovely gift box and the onesie and little hat, and it said, "This is what it's like to work for a truly amazing employer." And that wasn't put up. We didn't ask them to do that. And so to me, there's a double impact. You're making your employee happy, feeling appreciated, feeling loved, keeping that connection with the organization, but you're also in return doing something really incredible. You are helping these babies and children around the world. And then what we did, as you know, which was your idea, was let's keep them involved in the story, and let's tell them who they're helping, and send updates. And it's those other little touches. So I honestly, I mean, look, in my role, I have brought about huge amounts of change. I have changed culture, working very closely with our CEO. I have really successfully, I think, embedded agile, flexible working across our organization. But of the thing that is most heartfelt to me, it's the relationship with From Babies with Love and what you and I did together. And it's to me, that's the biggie.
Oh, Emma, I am so incredibly proud that you chose our partnership to as the example to answer that question with. Thank you so much. And I have to say, listening to you, I had butterflies in my tummy all the way through. It means so much to me. And you talk in some of your global reporting about your achievements in furthering equity inclusion, about the butterfly effect and the kind of ripple effect that small changes can have throughout the world. And, as well as the effect that together we have for the children that our partnership supports, and the ongoing effect that their happy upbringing has for their adulthood and therefore their community and therefore broader society. As an example of how HR leaders change the world, your leadership, when we became partners, so much of my work was then going out to pitching to lots of other companies to see if they would like to join in and partner as well. And when they asked me the question, okay, so who are your clients? Of course, being able to say, well, Deloitte. And like you said at the beginning, most people do know who Deloitte is, such a well-known brand, which has made my life so much easier, as you can imagine, because of, your leadership lent to us the credibility of the impact of what we were doing. So, that butterfly effect in my tummy, and it's also going on around the world. But I wanted to ask you, if I may, just to, because you described the problem that you identified with your CEO, David, at the beginning of the program of work that you've grown and led. Our partnership is just one tiny little element, as you alluded to, of the many other huge pieces of work, much bigger pieces of work that you've done. Are there any KPIs that are your favourite KPIs or clearest, easiest to measure ones? Because I know a lot of this is not easy to measure, that show the results of all the programmes, of which we're just one small part, where you are now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So from a global perspective, so my role now obviously is a very large global role, and having just spanned one country, and then actually my role in the UK expanded to take over the talent role for what was then Deloitte Northwest Europe, and that was added a few more countries into the fray, and then it's now this just enormous role. And I think we really proudly report on the impact that our organisation has. So our societal impact programme at a global level, world class, is we have a commitment to impact 50 million futures over the next few years. And that is primarily through education, but also through other aspects as well. And every year we produce a global impact report that sets out some examples of some of the incredible things that we do. So educating children through a couple of incredible projects in India that our global CEO, Puneet Ranjan, has really personally been passionate about and supporting. Many millions of individuals are getting a good education. Obviously, we include From Babies with Love as part of that as well, and have included that as well, because that we do see that as making a really solid positive impact for us. There's quite a strong focus around STEM. And actually, this for us, many individuals who work for us have STEM backgrounds and STEM skills. And we all know that, particularly from a women perspective, we know that not enough girls are choosing STEM in school. And it goes right the way back to quite early stages of their organization, of their education. And so we believe that we can actually have a positive impact on that, whether it's through mentoring, whether it's through helping organizations that focus on girls who code, cyber skills. There's just this incredible array of social impact projects that we have a really meaningful role in, and it makes you so proud. I mean, you referred to the butterfly effect. One of the things that we did when I went into my global role, what I wanted to do was show that what we're doing around gender balance is not just within our walls, it's also outside our walls. And I wanted to pull together a collection of stories talking about the impact that as an organization, the impact that we have had around the world when it comes to women and girls. And really helping to make sure that their future is actually, their future is successful. And we chose a number of really impactful stories, including from Babies with Love as part of that. I was so proud that made the cut, and that we managed to talk more about the work that you are doing. And we had other stories about the impact that sponsorship and mentoring had on the lives of these amazing girls. I mean, the stories literally would bring tears to my eyes. They still do. And actually that sort of butterflies in the tummy feeling where you read this and you think, oh my goodness, my organization is doing this. And so for me, that we are very, very clear that this is really important for us to do. And it's equally important that we can talk about it, and in doing so can draw attention to the programs that we are really heavily involved in, and the programs that really matter, and they really matter to our people. So many of our people give up their own time to get involved in these, and also are given time at work in a normal working day to get involved in these societal impact projects. So there's a huge amount of information out there, but the big number is that we will positively impact 50 million people around the world, which is just incredible.
How HR Leaders Change the World is brought to you by From Babies with Love, and this episode is sponsored by our very own parental leave gift service. We help solve the challenge of connecting with colleagues across parental leave and in returning to work, contributing to talent retention and so too gender balance strategy. From Babies with Love donates 100% of its profits to orphaned and abandoned children. Your beautiful, sustainably sourced From Babies with Love gifts come with the story of how your company is also helping a less fortunate child, creating meaningful engagement. We transform spend that so often already takes place on flowers or products that don't have the Sustainable Development Goals at their heart. We transform that spend to become a consistent, inclusive and strategic part of your working parents programme. Ask us to tell you more at frombabieswithlove.org. Make an impact at a defining moment. And I believe I'm right in saying, in reading in some of your reporting, that so one of the impact statistic, or the statistics that you mentioned in describing the problem, was the attrition rate of working parents and the impact that was having on your talent pool, and in particular the attrition rate of working mothers and the impact on your gender balance strategy. And what I think I'm right in saying that since your program of work, and we're talking, good several years later, would I be right to say that the attrition statistic has dropped? And I just thought it's particularly interesting at the moment as well. We're recording this episode during the pandemic, and there have been so many reports about the imbalance in the impact of work-life balance, actually, and domestic responsibilities is having on women. So I'm conscious that statistics might get skewed by that, given the last 18 months. But overall, am I right to say that things have improved in the way that you wanted to for your employee and talent measurements too?
Yes, and I mean, I can comment from a UK perspective in just at the end of, and actually pre-pandemic. So I finished my role. My role was only supposed to be for a couple of years, ended up being for 6 years, and we had a leadership change, and I came out of my role and was blessed to be able to move into this incredible new role that I still feels new now, even though I've had it for quite a while. And what I was able to do during that time was actually look back over, right, what did we achieve at the end of that 6 years? David and I and the leadership of the organisation in the UK, what had we done, and could we show a measurable impact? And we really could. We started on our journey. Really, I took my role in 2013. 2014, we really started trying to crack Agile working and started then building in other intervention. So I always talk about our approach being a mixture of a focus on a respectful and inclusive culture, accompanied by targeted intervention. So we looked at effectively what we thought we could do better. So which parts of our process, so whether that was changing our recruitment process, whether it was changing the way that we evaluated for promotion, we introduced things like working parents transitions coaching, which had a massive impact, and actually designed it in a way that our people actually said they wanted, rather than assuming that they wanted and needed something. We did so much. There was such a raft of change, and at the end of that period, it was incredible. I mean, we looked at, so that manager and senior manager drop off. We looked at that, and that had all but gone. It was the attrition would just we had lower than average attrition from women at those grades. So the reality was that women wanted to stay with us, were choosing to stay with us. We also, at the start in 2013, when I took over my role, on average, year on year, 13% of those that we promoted to partner from within were women. I mean, it's a really poor statistic. And that's why only 13% or possibly 14% of our partners at that stage in 2013 were women. By the time that I finished, so by 2019, as at the 1st of June, the 41% of the people that we promoted to partner were women. So that was a massive increase. That was just in that year. And our overall partner statistics had gone up to 21% of our partners being women. Now, that is still, for those of you listening, you'll still be sitting probably thinking that's terrible, but that is a huge increase, when actually the reality was we did that over a 4-year period, because we had a couple of years as we were starting where we started embedding. So it took that long to really see the results. So yes, the impact from a UK perspective has been really positive. Your point around COVID and around the pandemic, which has the human cost, we all know, and are still seeing that today with the horrific reports that we're seeing coming out of India, for example. We produced a piece of research. We've got another one coming up, actually, but we produced a piece of research on the impact of women, the impact of the pandemic on women in the workplace. And I know there's been a lot of research produced around that, and the statistics are really poor. And from a work-life balance perspective, from a mental and physical health perspective, from a feeling of always on. And you know what? I live that dream. I have to say, I have really struggled as well to keep it all together. I lost my support structure. My nanny came down with COVID. I was lucky to have a nanny. My nanny came down with COVID right at the start. I haven't had any childcare help since then. I have two daughters who have actually turned 12 today. And it's been really tough. But the one thing that I think is an opportunity for HR leaders, for talent leaders, I think there is a chance to rebuild better. And I think that all the research that's being done, our Pulse report that I was just talking about, that came up with a number of recommendations that were based on what women themselves were saying they needed and they wanted. This isn't about fixing women, because women don't need to be fixed, in my view. This is about fixing some of the things that we do as organizations. And I think this is about taking what's worked, what we know has actually worked during the pandemic. So, for example, not always having to be present, working in a different way. It would be great to do it without all the other pressures on top of us, but we know that we can be productive. And those leaders that possibly were not as supportive of agile or flexible working, I hope, have realized that this is all about judging on output. This is not about judging on presenteeism, because frankly, we haven't been able to. So I think there is a huge opportunity to rebuild better. I think there is a risk with this, you can't open an HR publication at the moment without reading the words hybrid working. And my one worry is that we will inadvertently exclude through hybrid working. And I think the organizations that will get it right from a diversity perspective, and therefore an engagement and productivity perspective, will be the organizations that recognize that hybrid working could inadvertently exclude. And so working really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen, that you don't end up with yet another tier in terms of our workplaces and our societies within our workplaces. So yes, it's been awful. It has had a significant impact of women in the workplace, but I am always an optimist, and I do think we have a once in a generation chance to rebuild organizations in a way that work for women and actually work for all people. And to change some of the things that perhaps we should have changed a while ago.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear, Emma. And it leads us perfectly into the next question that we ask, which is to think about your industry, so professional services, and what you see as the most exciting opportunity for HR leaders in professional services to change the world. So, but just leading on from what you said and the wonderful optimism you feel for how agile working can create a more inclusive global working culture. Are there one or two particular examples of ideas or policies or ways of working practices that you're brainstorming and exploring at the moment that excite you the most?
If I start with the one thing, and then actually let me start with the agile working and that side. Look, I think I'm still in the same place that I was when I looked at this from a UK perspective a long time ago. The thing that excites me the most at the moment is that the barrier that is always typically there when it comes to successfully embedding flexible or agile working is leadership and management. And you look at most pieces of research. I mean, time-wise, we did a piece of research with them many years ago. They're an incredible organization that focuses on flexible working. And I remember really clearly one of the findings being all around the support of managers and leaders, and managers and leaders not judging somebody adversely because they want to work in a different way. And so I think the thing about the moment and the time we're in now is we have had this period of time where we have been forced to work in a different way. And as a result, those leaders or managers with more entrenched views, perhaps, in terms of what performance, what comprises high performance, i.e., typically for many, it used to be, well, it's what I see in front of me. So if it's a person at their desk, then I believe that they are actually performing. Whereas I always used to say, well, I could be doing my supermarket shop. If I'm at my desk, I can be doing anything online. That doesn't mean that I'm actually doing what you want me to do. And so I think we're now in the situation where you've converted the people that possibly were the doubters to the fact that you can work from home. And actually, as many of us know, it's been really challenging working from home. But imagine when we don't have those caring responsibilities that also wrapped into the whole package. Imagine when we can work from home and we can really dedicate all of that time to working home. We maintain productivity even with all the challenges around. Many of us managed to do that, probably at great expense to our mental and physical health, which again is another finding that comes out of the survey. So look, I think that at this present moment in time, that cultural barrier that was there in terms of acceptance, in terms of judgment and stigma when it came to, I can't see the person, or this person wants to work reduced, on a reduced presence. How can I possibly know that they're performing? I actually think that's changed. I think that cultural barrier, I really hope, has shifted a lot, and I really hope it will stay that way as well. So I really hope that we don't see people with the expectation that that you must always be present. And I think that's what's exciting about hybrid working and about you will see more and more people, choosing to spend some time in the office, some time working from somewhere else. But as I said before, we have to do that in a way that doesn't end up making our problem worse. And then just a final point at the moment in my industry, specifically. So for us as Deloitte, a really big focus for us externally from an inclusion perspective is mental health. And we have worked, it is one of our global inclusion priorities. It has been that way since before the pandemic. The pandemic brought it sharply into focus. Our Millennials survey, if anybody that hasn't seen that Millennial survey data, it's really worth going on to Deloitte.com, download the Millennial survey. It'll give you the most incredible insight into Millennials and Generation Zs around the world. 18,000 survey of 18,000 non-Deloitte people. And the findings there on mental health were so stark and upsetting. And in particular, that around half of those individuals feel stressed or anxious all or most of the time. And then whilst around half of the people that we surveyed feel that it is appropriate to take time off when it comes to their mental health, if they're suffering from mental ill health, around a third of those that did take time off for that purpose didn't tell their employer that that's why they were taking the time off. And so it shows that stigma is well and truly still embedded within there. I think as an employer, there is so much opportunity and to impact wider society as well. So we are proudly a founding partner of the Global Business Collaboration on Better Workplace Mental Health, alongside companies like HSBC, like Unilever, like Salesforce. And we together are collaborating to make sure that we can talk about best practice, talk about what's worked within our organizations, talk about things that make a difference, whether you are a tiny, very small company in one country or whether you are a company that is across multiple countries. We think that this focus is so important, and we also think that it's so important it's led by the CEO from the top of the organization, so that we can really make progress once and for all on this. Mental health is not an issue that just relates to the pandemic, and our Millennial survey shows that. It shows it was really a stark problem prior to the pandemic. And my worry is that there will be some leaders out there who, yes, are talking about it more now, but will just assume it relates only to the pandemic. It really doesn't. And it's really important to address it. And that's what we and our fellow founding partners at the GBC are focused on doing on a global basis.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was talking recently to somebody who was describing what it's like for people starting their career, maybe school leavers or graduates, and having to work from home and not having the opportunity to make new friends and learn from managers and peers and other leaders in a face-to-face environment. And I started my career in a huge organisation surrounded by people who I learnt from. And I can't even imagine how weird it would be and how hard it would be, and the mental health impacts of just that one example that I guess is pandemic related, but the headlines around different mental health pressures that younger people are facing, it will just have been compounded by that. It's things that already existed, as you say. And I also was thinking while you were talking about what you were saying about the culture change, that the opportunity that hybrid working creates. Because I was thinking about me when I'm not in our office. And before the pandemic, I was in and out of London like a yo-yo for meetings. And in between meetings, it was just me and my laptop and my phone in all sorts of wonderful secret office locations I've created for myself, borrowing desks and sofas and armchairs here, there and everywhere so that I could keep productivity high and plough on with work no matter where I was. And I've worked like that for so long. And maybe big businesses, it will change like that as well. You'll have your phone and your laptop and there you go, do your work. But I was thinking, I'm never inclined to sit at my laptop and do my shopping online or any other kind of life admin that is huge on my to-do list. And it's because of the purpose of From Babies with Love.
Right.
And how I'm personally driven by that and believe in that. And I just wanted to relate that back to the culture of a huge global organization with 330,000 people like Deloitte, because Deloitte is also a leader in articulating and living and its purpose, and engaging its whole workforce in understanding their contribution to that. So I just think that cultural change around what is the role of business in society and how does that drive everybody's behaviour, no matter where they are, with a laptop and a phone, to be incredibly productive and achieve great things. And I think that ties in as well, and will change the world, therefore. So, Emma, we've covered so much already, and I'm going to actually merge our next two questions, because the third question is around an area of social or environmental injustice that you're passionate about and that you see your role gives you the opportunity to create change. And I know you're passionate about gender imbalance and gender injustice and Sustainable Development Goal 5, and you've described so much, and we know that your work is a straight line contributor to achieving SDG 5. And then also question 4 is around how you've best used your position to bring about a more equitable and inclusive environment. So are there any other examples, not to not present the opportunity to answer those questions? Is there anything else that you'd like to share today that we've not covered so far?
So I love the questions. You are right. I'm passionate about gender equality. I'm actually passionate about equality, full stop. And I was so privileged to, in my UK role, to have been able to be an early gender pay gap reporter. We were an early ethnicity pay gap reporter before it was required. I'm a big fan, a big believer in transparency. I'm a big believer in measuring, in setting targets and then measuring impact. I believe that what gets measured gets done. And so that my old role, my former role, really enabled me to do that. And I suppose in order to, in my view, to make any progress on diversity, on any aspect of diversity, and also on mental health, it's that inclusive culture. And that is something that I have been so passionate about. I'm still passionate about it. I talk about it as being your everyday culture. You have as an organization, we all have our values that are very important to us that we will talk to. But this is actually, to me, how you feel every day. So how do you feel when you go into work, when we used to go into work? How do you feel when you go into your virtual workplace? How does your work and your job and the way you interact with others, how does that make you feel? Do you feel respected or disrespected? Do you feel included or excluded? And that has been a massive focus of mine since 2013. And I actually believe that was the foundation for the big change that we saw in the UK from a gender balance perspective. I believe it is now a focus for us on a global, and actually long has been a focus for us on a global basis as well. We've recently produced these really impactful educational films called Can You See Me, which are out on our website and on my LinkedIn page as well. And the intention of those was, again, to really focus on the impact of actions and words, and to really try and get everybody to just stop and think for a moment that what you say and what you do, there's a choice. It can either have a really positive impact or it can have a negative impact. And microaggressions, we've heard so much in the last few months about microaggressions. And to me, that is the everyday culture element. Microaggressions are often unintended. And so it's about educating people. It's about bringing about culture change. It's about people wanting to understand, wanting to see the world through someone else's eyes. And finally, it's about allyship. I'm a really proud ally, and I believe that I'd like everybody to be everyone to be proud allies as well. So to me, it's the big thing as to how I best use my position, I think, is lasting and sustained culture change.
Yeah, and that the videos that you mentioned make me cry, by the way. They are amazing.
They do me as well.
I encourage all our listeners to go and have a look on Deloitte's website to see them. But they're a great example of something practical, because culture change can sound like theoretical. It's like, okay, well, where do I start in changing my culture? So there are a brilliant example of something practical that people can learn from your experience and consider for their own companies too. And that leads us brilliantly into our final question. Question 5 is a quick question, but I think it's the hardest because, again, we like to get really practical, so that people listening, if they want to take away something from listening to you that they feel inspired by, they've got something they can say, okay, here's where I start. And so it's one specific action that you would like to see all HR leaders, all your peers and everybody in the HR profession do to make a positive change for the world. What would that one action be?
It would be make a difference on everyday culture. It's from an inclusion, a diversity and inclusion perspective. I think we all like shiny things. We all like a program here, a program there. The one thing from an organizational perspective that I think has been slightly neglected is a real focus on everyday organizational culture, how people really feel every day. That's within all our gifts to do something about. And that's the one thing that I would love to see HR leaders focus on.
Thank you so much, Emma. I feel like we really only touched the surface of all the work that you do to create positive change in the world. It's been amazing to listen to you. And thank you so much for joining us on How HR Leaders Change the World.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of How HR Leaders Change the World. Thank you for tuning in. If you have a moment to leave a review, a 5-star one please, that would be a huge help to achieving our goal to reach more of your peers, so we can all contribute to further and faster positive change. For your copy of the show notes, head to frombabieswithlove.org, where you can also join the How HR Leaders Change the World mailing list, and make sure you don't miss out on future episodes and bonus materials. And for harnessing the power of your role to create positive social change, I'm sending you a jumping up in the air virtual high five. See you next time on How HR Leaders Change the World.